And the headlines away from the big ones. Victory for borrowers as MPs retain low on rates. Borrowers will enjoy cheaper loans after Parliament proposed amendments to the rate cap that may bring the lending rate, listen to this, to 11.6%. As it is slightly above 13%. It's about 13.5%, 13.6%. Currently, the central bank rate, that's a CBR, which is a benchmark used to price loan interests, stands at 9%, and lenders are restricted to adding 4 percentage points, bringing the maximum interest charged at 13%. This could go down to 11.6%. This is a proposal. It's a proposed amendment before the National Assembly's Committee on Finance and National Planning, which wants the lending rates calculated using the Kenya Bank's reference rates base rate. It's a KBRR of 7.6%. Hence, interest charged by lenders could go as high as 11.6% and be capped at that. Now, this is something positive. And yes, there's been a lot of push for those caps on interest rates from the IMF, from the central bank governor. I do understand even the CS Treasury is in support of removing the cap on interest rates, but now MPs are doing the opposite, quite the opposite. Is this a populist move by the MPs? Because, the other question would be, because there's a lot of lobbying, and we've heard about lobbying in Parliament and what goes on in Parliament. Don't you think that this is one of those things that could actually encounter such roadblocks? I
think you wouldn't call it a populist move, but if anything that helps the local mwananchi that we represent in Parliament, then if you call it populist, you will agree, because that is the reason we are elected, to actually take care of the interest of the Kenyans. And if you look at this debate, in fact, if you remember the time the president signed this bill, in fact, it was widely expected that he will not sign, because his family had been associated with owning a bank, the local bankers, even the Kenya Bankers Association, even as recent as last week, had presented a memo to actually join CS Rotich in appealing for the repeal of this rate, of this capping. But to the local mwananchi, what we need is affordable credit, because even today I'm going to give Uwezo Fund checks today in my constituency, and Youth Fund checks. You cannot, it is not easy to just prosper without getting credit. And I say that because even us, if you ask Manzo how much is on his payslip, you'll actually laugh, because we are beneficiaries of loans, because you must be able to afford a house. It is not easy to get a mortgage. You must really get, you don't have that cash. So we are all having debts one way or another. You'll have it in Parliament, which is an affordable rate, but sometimes you are forced to even go out to the banks. Parliamentarians enjoy interest rates as low as 3%. Yes, but you also go out to the banks to get additional money. And I know many of us have encountered these high rates. When it was 18, when any bank could actually put it at whatever percentage, because they could do their own risk assessment and decide for us to be able to break even and make comfortable profits, we'll put it at 18 or 19%. Why they are complaining, it actually went crazy. Why this was important is that we needed to take care of the local mwananchi to be able to access credit without being exploited. And the one thing you must also note, Fred, right now is that even as they complain, the banks complain about these rates, none is going under in terms of they are not making more profit. In fact, every year they still report profits that to many companies and SMEs can only be enviable. So we are hoping that we are going to retain the caps. Personally, I support the retention of this capping. In fact, it will get better if this law is passed. It will get better to the local mwananchi. You can be able to access a cheap loan to be able to expand your business and enterprises, and we will be able to change the economy of this country. Now, the argument is that that cap in rates had resulted in a slowdown in economic growth because banks slow down in lending. But these banks are still making profits, even with that slowdown in lending. Do you think they're genuine in their push for this repealing of the rates?
I don't think they are. And you know, at that particular moment when this law was assented to by the president, the banks didn't expect the president to sign it. And I think he was kind enough and wise enough to support Kenyans. If you have to grow the economy, especially with solving the problem of housing. You need many people taking mortgages. And I can assure the banks that they will not get a loss, because the moment the rates are favorable, a lot more people now will borrow. And we'll have a lot more people, you know, owning houses, owning properties, expanding their businesses, because you cannot really grow without credit. And we want the common Kenyans to benefit, you know, from the loan, so that they can be able to pay up a mortgage. The previous situation was such that many people were unable to repay their loans, and eventually they lost whatever little they had. So we did this in Parliament to protect the common mwananchi, the one we represent.
Yes, and of course banks also run a risk, because the normal bank customer seems to have shifted. After banks denied the mass market loans, they seem to have moved to mobile money. And there's so many providers.
There's mobile money. Yes. There's also the SACCOs. In fact, they are growing.
Yes. And
every time, in fact, in our constituencies, even guys who didn't have offices for SACCOs, they are now introducing SACCOs, because there's a market, there's a ready market. And of course, Shylocks have also, you know, gotten
really
into it, really benefited, and from this windfall from the banks, because when the banks don't give, then someone must step in. And it is a good and a bad thing, because Shylocks are also very ruthless. I have seen people in my constituency being auctioned, and they don't even give you a warning. They actually just come for your cow or come for your furniture, you know, because the regulation is not as good as it is with the banks. But going forward, I think the conversation is healthy. I know the banks will not stop. They will keep pushing. But they will also realize that they have to diversify their own asset liability mismatch bridging, that they also think outside the box, that if you don't get this, you have to get other ways, through treasury bills, through whatever it is, through government and lending to the government, I don't know. But they have to diversify in terms of how they also make their money and how they stay afloat. But for the Kenyans, they really must get, someone will step in. And what I foresee is a rise of the SACCOs, because they are easier to lend, and the money is faster, and the interest rates are easier to actually deal with.
Are we saying that the people who run banks in Kenya are not seeing this? Because surely it is there for everyone to see. We've seen businesses slow down and actually close shop for failure to read the market and the movement of the market. The fact that more Kenyans are not even looking at the banks for money, they're now more and more looking for other sources. Banks should actually see this and see that as a risk, as a red flag for their businesses.
Not really, because you see SACCOs, the way they are structured, they are member-owned, they are member-controlled, and the regulation now has even been improved. So we encourage the formation of SACCOs, and competition is healthy. And you know, now even with mobile money, it's even much better. So I believe banks will be creative enough, and are still holding a lot of money is belonging to the public, and for that matter, they are still trading. So I believe competition is, and also most of these SACCOs eventually also rebank with the banks. You know, most SACCOs are associated, because they are cooperatives, they are associated with the cooperative bank. So even a cooperative bank is creative enough to be able to accommodate SACCOs. And I believe the rest of the banks will have to become creative to be able to work for the benefit of the common Kenyan.
The person who benefits at the end of the day with the competition is the mwananchi. Because as much as they try to outdo each other, the interest rates become more friendly to the mwananchi.
So it is definitely a conversation that we should continue having. Victory for borrowers as MPs retain law on rates, and that's an amendment proposed in the House, and of course we'll be seeing how it goes. On page 3 of the Daily Nation, Uhuru honors women trailblazers for service to public. More than 20 women were recognized yesterday by the government for their various contributions to socio-economic and political spheres in Kenya. Christened trailblazers, the list includes veterans who have been involved with various causes and initiatives aimed at empowering women and the Kenyan society since independence. Now, the main question is, a lot of these presidential awards and honors, we saw quite a number earlier this year, and they came under a lot of criticism, because they said even the criteria used to actually get the list of people to be honored, quite a number of people, including Githeriman, was honored with the head of state commendation, and quite a number of people felt probably he should not have, but probably the president or those people who put him on the list must have felt that he deserved it. There's now a new list and a different award program. I don't know your opinion on this.
I think if you watched it yesterday, you realized it was basically just a women affair in the State House. And I remember a colleague of mine called me and asked me, why is everyone in State House? Why is every woman in State House? Even the MPs, everyone was in State House. And for the first time, you have not had anyone complain about this list. Because even the way it was awarded, it was diverse. It was not to one tribe. It was in different fields. We had Wanjiku Kabira, who is a lecturer. We had Aluot, the judge. We had even the first bank manager, you know, in Kenya, who was a woman. We had the nurses. I think one of the oldest nurses. I think it cut across. But for me,
so you're saying
it was
in comparison to the awards given out earlier this year, this one was done in a better way.
In fact, I have not had anyone complain either. People don't really care because there were women, or
why would that be? Sure?
I'm just saying because it didn't attract as much attention. But I would say nobody complained. I haven't seen any complaint. In fact, only the men would say that they were kind of left out. But I think if you analyze all the recipients of the CBSs and OGWs, you'll find that there are more men than women. Yeah. But for yesterday's function, I think it was well deserved. And more importantly, Phoebe Asio, one of the longest serving woman in the women movement, that we are beneficiaries today. Because even in the constitution making where we created the affirmative seats, these women were there. They may not have sat in parliament, but we benefited. Those of us who sat in the Senate as nominated as women reps have these women to thank. And she launched her memoirs in State House. I think it was a big honor that she was able to do that. But more importantly, if you listened to what Honorable Phoebe Asio told the president, and it was very deep, he owes it to the Kenyan women that this not more than 2/3 gender rule is achieved in his term. And I hope that he will do it this time, and not as lip service, because what we saw in the 11th parliament, we will have Honorable Duale say they will bring it to parliament, they will even table it. Even now, he has a bill on the 2/3, not more than 2/3 gender rule in parliament. We have 2 bills. And then on the corridors, they'll say, we are not going to pass this thing. And when it comes to voting, they all disappear. But in other ones, when they are whipped properly, from even the State House and from all the political, because even the Honorable Raila Odinga actually helped whip the other time. But they will make sure they deny it quorum. And yesterday we saw Ida Odinga also benefit from this. And I think it really cut across the country and different fields. And I hope that we can be able to achieve this not more than 2/3 gender rule. Not only in parliament, but also in the appointive seats. Even as the president appoints CSS, appoints PSS, the minimum. I mean, Phoebe Asio said we are not even asking for 50%, which is our rightful share, because we are 52% in the world and in the country. We are only asking for 30%, which we have not been able to achieve. And I normally tell people say there are so many women in parliament nowadays, but out of 290 constituencies, Maanzo, we are only 23. 23 is not even 10%. It's not even 10%. It is negligible, and it's a shame as a country.
Now, among the awards given yesterday, there's the Order of Golden Heart, with the recipients being Nyiva Mwendwa, Ida Odinga, Julia Ojambo, Margaret Kenyatta, posthumously. That's the daughter of the first president of Kenya, Margaret Kenyatta. Also, Order of the Burning Spear awarded to Miss Phoebe Asio, Miss Grace Onyango, nominated Senator Beth Mugo, ICC Judge Joyce Aluoch, and former Maendeleo Wanawake Chairperson Zipporah Kitoni. Others recognized included Professor Wanjiku Kabira, Muthoni Likimani, Professor Marian Zomo, Mary Okello, Jennifer Riria, Evangeline Muli. But when it comes to this awards, state commendations, head of state commendation, do you still feel they still hold that luster? They still have that weight that they used to have, especially after what we saw earlier this year with the award of various honors that were highly criticized by members of the public?
Yeah, I'm Order of the Burning Spear, which I was awarded by President Kibaki. And I want to say that if you do something outstanding to the nation, I believe these women have deserved it. And first of all, it's a win for women. We must appreciate the role of a woman in society. In fact, I want to tell Honorable Wangari that all these men you see in Parliament, they are there courtesy of the efforts by their wives. So we must appreciate the role of women in the country, and we must now look forward into the 2/3 gender rule, such that we can be able to build our nation, and we can encourage very many women who are very potential. And you can see the example of Phoebe Asio. She has now written a book. She's still very encouraging. She's still very fluent. She's still looking forward into a better nation whereby the role of women is recognized. So I think what happened yesterday is a big plus, you know, for women in Kenya, and we want to encourage the president to continue honoring women. You know, it should become an annual or you know, event such that women who give outstanding service to the nation can be honored.
What about your opinion on the issue of the two-thirds gender role? Do you think this is something that President Uhuru Kenyatta can be able to achieve within his term? Because probably to need an election cycle, probably to need an election process to, because I know there are proposals even in Parliament that would require an actual election for such things to be achieved.
It is actually in our constitution, and it is upon every Kenyan to strive to achieve it.
Do you think it's possible for the president to achieve it in the next 4 years?
It is by appointments. You know, the next appointments should adhere to that rule. And at least Parliament should always remind him when names are sent for approval. We actually have 1% woman, and this is from the president himself. So I believe after this he's going to add more women in the public appointments Parliament approves.
Okay. And that is as far as Trailblazers campaign, rather, by the president, where he's honoring Trailblazers for service to public. Yesterday he honored 20 women for their role in various and their contribution to socio-economic and political spheres in Kenya. And that list is shared in the dailies this morning. As we wrap up our news review this morning, we still haven't managed to talk to Wilson Sosion with regard to the conflicting headlines on the two dailies on whether or not there is a strike by teachers come next week. But there is a headline on the front page of the Daily Nation that I want us to look at as we wrap up. It's official, you've been on bad sugar. It is now confirmed consumers have been on the verge of taking contaminated sugar if they haven't already. They've also been taking substandard edible oils at a premium, and farmers have been at the mercy of barons selling fake fertilizer. Wow. This is on page 6. Of course, we saw what happened with the sugar report. Parliament was not kind enough to actually tell us whether or not we were consuming contaminated sugar. Now we do understand there's contaminated rice at the port. Some of imports of oil, food oil and cooking oil that have been coming to the country, it's been confirmed that it's contaminated. This is a lot. It's a huge consignment, and it's actually made it not just to the shelves in supermarkets, but also to the tables and plates of many Kenyans. Now, you are members of the National Assembly. You saw what you did with the sugar report. Now, this is already happening. Should Kenyans even look at the National Assembly for salvation in as far as this is concerned?
I think in the Muli, you can't say that we will give up on a whole institution, because if you do that, then it's just we are losing hope, and we can't do that as Kenyans. And these headlines are actually heartbreaking. That, if you ask me, we have lost humanity, that we want to kill our generations because of greed and because of I don't even know what to call it. It is not something you can explain, really, because what Kenyans were hoping for in the National Assembly, and we have seen them, Kenyans being disappointed, rightfully so. I was not lucky to be in the debate because I was not able to debate it. But if you ask me, I think we owe Kenyans, you know, we owe Kenyans as the National Assembly that. And I hoped, I saw Honorable Oluoch try to reintroduce it, because we needed a conclusive report on this sugar issue, without interests, without being influenced, that we can give a conclusive report that tells us what exactly happened. And it is saddening that even as we debate sugar, there is now rice. There is even petroleum that is substandard, even the fertilizers we are using. But I think as a country, we also must be serious in what we do. Whether it's a minister for trade, is a minister for agriculture. Now what we are seeing is them throwing the ball. It is not me, it was you. It is not agriculture, it is trade. It is not trade, it is KRA. It is not KRA, it is KEBS. Really, and I think we've already started with KEBS in terms of taking responsibility. Even the CSS must own up and be able to take responsibility in terms of the things that come in through the port, imported sugar, let us not give poison to Kenyans. And we owe them that, and we owe them a clear way forward.
Well,
about
it's easier said than done, because the National Assembly's reputation now is in tatters. You cannot stand up on any podium and tell any Kenyans, including your constituents, that you will protect them from these things we are seeing on the headlines.
Yes, you know, I was in the committee, and I've been very clear from the onset that as a committee we found out that sugar was actually contaminated. And you know, Parliament is not the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. It is not DPP. There are things Parliament can do, and there are things Parliament can propose. It is now clear to Kenyans, and I'm happy the newspapers are reporting it. The sugar we have in the country, most of it is contaminated in one way or another, either by coloration or by molds or by, you know, arsenic, lead, and even to a certain extent mercury. And that be the truth, the person now with the responsibility is a Mount agency. I am aware that under the leadership of the Honorable Matiang'i, a lot of this contraband sugar was captured, it's been arrested, it's been stolen, and it's being destroyed. The thing is, now it is the responsibility of the Mount agency and the government to make sure that all this sugar is destroyed, none of it sneaks into the market, because a few Kenyans will really suffer. And you know, we must protect the country, we must protect our health. It is very, very expensive to treat people. We go through it as members of Parliament every day. You have a patient or another stuck in a hospital somewhere. It is worse if this came out of poisoning, whereby somebody who is responsible somewhere did not take action. Some people in CAPS were charged. CAPS needs to do much better, and it also needs to be assisted by the Department of Public Health. We really have all the systems. We just need to implement them. This sugar must be destroyed. The criminals should be charged in court of law. Any importer or any dealer dealing with contaminated sugar is a criminal.
Yes.
And should be arrested and charged, and the law is there. But it seems some people are untouchable, and no one wants to take responsibility. The Constitution and Article 153 allows ministers to take personal responsibility. The president also advised them, this time round you are going to be in charge, and you are going to take responsibility of the ministry you are in charge, such that the operations under that ministry must be able to be monitored properly, and we should not allow sacred cows in the country. Whoever brought bad sugar in this country must be charged in a court of law and go through what other criminals go through. And
perhaps members of the public would also hope that the same treatment will be accorded to members of the National Assembly and anyone found to have taken a bribe towards defeating that sugar report, which was very close to the hearts of many Kenyans, will be found culpable and also be brought to book. Thank you so much, Martha Wangari and Daniel Manzo, MPs Gilgil and Makueni. Probably final comment, because you're going to the weekend. 30 seconds in a minute. Yes.
Thank you. And I actually support you in terms of taking responsibility. In fact, we even have NIS officers in Parliament. You know, we have NIS officers. If anyone is culpable, whether in Parliament we have the powers and privileges, let them be taken to that committee to be able to clear their names and be action be taken. And I hope that the DCI also, we start seeing these sugar barons being charged and people taking responsibility. That way people can realize their consequences, so that they can get afraid to do whatever they are doing. From here, of course, I'm headed to Gilgil. We are having what we are calling Huduma Mashinani. Yesterday we were in Naivasha, and we are bringing all the services to the people, and I'll also be issuing Uwezo Fund checks of over 3 million and Youth Fund, so that we can be able to expand the enterprising nation of this country.
Okay, thank you.
This weekend is a great one for the people of Makueni. We are welcoming all governors from all counties
to benchmark,
and they are being hosted to the headquarters of Makueni constituency. So I really want to welcome them to Makueni, and they'll see 1 or 2 projects. In fact, all the projects they will visit are in Makueni constituency. We are doing our level best, especially after the rains. You know, most of the roads were washed off. So we're working very hard together with the county government there, led by my professor, Kibuza Kibwana, to make sure the people of Makueni are happy and have been served by the leaders they elected.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel Manzo, MP Makueni, and Martha Wangari, MP Gilgil, helping us look at the issues behind the headlines this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our news review this morning. Remember, Daybreak still continues, and that's a hashtag to use. Our Twitter handle is at Citizen TV Kenya. My personal Twitter handle is at Fred Indemuli. You can also tweet at Joey_Mudhengi, at Willis Waburu, and at Wahiga Mwaura. Let's take a break now, and Daybreak will continue.